Well, Lisa, I'm so grateful that you're here today. I can't wait to dive into your new book. It just came out last week. It's called The Japanese Way of Parenting. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Diane.
So, why don't you briefly introduce yourself to the listeners, and then we'll talk about how the book came to be, and then we'll dive into all the great advice that you have for parents.
Sure, sounds good. So, my book is called The Japanese Way of Parenting, and it's really about my journey of raising my two kids who are still very small. So, this is really just about the first few years of parenting, about parenting toddlers. They live in the East Bay of California, Northern California, near San Francisco. My first kid was born during the COVID pandemic, and so we spent a lot of time at home together. And I hadn't really thought about like how do I want to raise my kid. It was really just about being together with her. And then it was when we started looking at daycare centers that I really started to think about like what are some of the values and principles that underlie what will become my parenting style. And the result of that is in this book.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you had lived in Tokyo for a period of time, correct?
That's right. I was born and raised there.
Okay, I thought that I had read that. So yeah, so I guess what came first? Like you had your children and then you were interested in different ways of parenting, but what prompted this book to come to be?
Yeah. When I started to look for daycare centers for my kid, I realized there were many different styles of care that were available to us. Actually, her first nanny, like when she was really small and daycare centers were still closed because of COVID, like she had a Tibetan nanny. And so her very first language that she understood was Tibetan, and that was very sweet. And then when we started looking around, we saw like so many different styles, like just in terms of how children were nurtured and cared for. All of them are great, right? We weren't like one was better than the other. But when I visited this Japanese daycare center, I felt this kind of sense of familiarity to some of the rituals and the routines and the ways that the teachers were interacting with the kids and how the kids were playing with each other. And so then really this book has been an observation of like myself as a parent, as well as like the journey that my kids have gone through the first few years of their childhood.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious to know, I guess from infancy, the way that Japanese parenting is maybe different than we do it here. Like, what are the differences? Are there differences, even from just the starting point?
Yeah, I do think it's quite different. The framework from which, within which children are raised is quite different. And again, like I'm raising my kids in the US, right? So ours is very much like a mix. And my husband is from West Africa. And so our household is like a mishmash of many different cultural components. But in Japan, overall, the mentality is very community first. So when kids are born and you get a manual from the government that explains like how you should be taking care of your child from the moment they're born until like basically age 20. And so there's very much like a one standard way of doing it. Of course every family is different, right? But there's generally like this is when you should start thinking about this thing and that thing and the other thing, and there's this one booklet that everybody gets. And then in the US, I think it's like very much a do it yourself, choose your own adventure type of thing, right? There's so many different ways to parent and, so many different cultural backgrounds here. Yeah. So I think that's probably the biggest thing is that Japan is very much community first. So what that means when you're a small child is that you're learning to understand who you are and what your role is in relation to what your surroundings are. So it's like here it's more about like who am I and who am I going to be? What do I like? What's my favorite color? Like it's really like me and who I am, right? And you start to develop that very early on.
Yeah.
And then in Japan it's more like okay, like let's learn how, like my kids have this little like tablet. It's like a tablet tutor thing that it's in Japanese so they can try to keep it up. But some of the lessons are like math, English, and writing Japanese characters. And then some of them are like, here's how you mop a floor. Like,
Oh,
here's how you bring out a rag, or let's learn how to clean a blackboard in a classroom. And so
interesting.
all of those things are, yeah, developing a sense of like how you can play your part in keeping your surroundings clean or participating in society. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah, you write. If America emphasizes individuality first and then getting along with others, Japan is the exact opposite. But again, kind of going back to that foundational piece, I guess from 0 to 1, what would that look like in the household, even prioritizing I mean, I know that they're under one, so it's probably not necessarily like we're just trying to survive at that point and a baby is like coming into its own. So I don't know if this is a stupid question, but I guess how young can you start teaching more about the community collaborative piece? Because individuality is important. But yeah, am I making sense?
Yeah, I think, in the book, there's a moment where I take my kids who at the time they're like almost 1 and almost 4. Now they're a little older, but in the book, when they're that age, I took them to Japan and I observed like how, right, like other like here, I think, when your kids are really small, it's like anything goes. There's no one way you're expected to be in public. Like if your kid's
Sure.
screaming in a restaurant, it's just like we all know that's what happens.
Hmm.
But I think very early on in Japan, parents take on this like additional responsibility. I don't think this is good, but they take on this additional responsibility of like, if I'm going out with my child, I still have to look somewhat put together. And I still have to make sure that my kid is not going to like completely disturb the public, right? So, like,
Sure.
if your kid's having a meltdown in a public area, like I observe that a lot of parents take their kid and they'll like remove them. Like if they're in a
Yeah.
restaurant, they'll like take them outside. If they're in like a place where there are a lot of people, they'll try to like take them aside and calm them down before bringing them back in. So,
Hmm.
but then like by the time the kids are able to be a little bit more autonomous and on their own, they have like been conditioned to understand like when I'm in a group of people, like I'm supposed to be kind of quiet.
Yeah.
The opening story in my book is about like when I'm in a bus and there's a bunch of elementary school kids and they're on the bus with me, but they're so quiet you don't even notice that they're there.
Mhm.
And like I feel like that's the opposite experience I have when I'm in a train here with a bunch of kids. The kids are pretty loud, right? And it's because I think again, like no judgment, but I think here, like if you're a kid, like it's okay to be loud and like it's like that's just you're just being you, whether
Mhm.
you're in the house or outside the house. But in Japan, it's very much like you can be in the house, you can be like silly and loud, but when you're outside, you have to respect everybody else and like what they're doing. And so then
Mhm.
I think that's a big difference as well. Yeah.
It's almost as if here in America, we don't necessarily apologize for our children just being children. And I believe in that, but I just see the balance of both sides. I think both sides are important. It's a healthy balance, right? Like it's important to respect our surroundings and people's experiences around us, but it's also I understand that kids are going to be kids and that people around us should also. So I think if we have a good blend of both of these perspectives, usually balance is what's best. Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that there's a shadow side to the Japanese way, which is that it's too restrictive and, it's a lot of pressure on moms. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of evidence now that newer generations of women are like, I just don't even want to be a mom because it's too much
Yeah.
pressure. Yeah. And like, I think all of us are trying really hard to mitigate that pressure on parents, right? And on mothers,
Sure.
especially on women. Yeah. That's kind of why we're here in this space, like trying to make sense of like how do we do motherhood and also be ourselves and be happy and have
Mhm.
sustainable lives.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, I'd love to get a few of these terms that you discuss in your book. The first one is hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. Bashi Teiko. Am I saying that right?
Boshitecho, yeah. So that's that booklet. Boshitecho is the
Got it.
booklet that the
Okay.
government
Okay.
sends you when you tell them you're pregnant.
Okay. And then what about Meiwaku?
Yeah, meiwaku. Yeah, so that means causing trouble for others. And
Okay.
right, so if you take your kid out in public and they're being really loud, then they're causing meiwaku to everybody around them. Or if you're
Okay.
late to an appointment, like you might be causing meiwaku to the people who are waiting for you. In Japan, everybody's always on time.
Oh,
So it's much more pronounced. Or like if you make a big mess and you don't clean up, then that's meiwaku as well because somebody's gonna have to clean up that mess. So yeah, so it's kind of I hear that word all the time when I'm in Japan around like parents with kids. They'll be like, "Oh, don't do meiwaku things for other people. Don't make loud noises because it's meiwaku." And then so yeah, it's really like about being respectful to others, but it can also be a little bit like kids are meiwaku, right? They cause trouble. Like that's just what they do.
sure.
So again, it's the balance of yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what I mean with anything, right? It comes back to balance and just seeing, not being on maybe necessarily either side of the spectrum. Maybe that sounds like a cop out to some people, but I do think there's a significance in respecting the society that you're part of and contributing to the collaborative benefit of the community, the benefit of
Mhm.
peace, even in the community, but also this whole idea that from the past in America of kids should be seen, not heard. I don't love that either. So yeah, I think there's a good
Mhm.
balance here. Another word
Yeah.
you talk about, it's pronounced shikari mono.
Oh, shikarimono. Yeah. So shikarimono is like a kid who can like hold their own, a person who can hold their own. In the US, like kids, the way we praise, I don't know, words you use to praise your kids might be like, oh, you did like such a great job, or like, that was awesome. Or, it's kind of like superlative. And in Japan, parent might like one of the things that would be a very good thing would be if your kid is a shikarimono, which means that they can like hold their own, like they can carry their own things, or they understand how things are supposed to be done and they do it, yeah, like that.
Why do you think that that perspective works in Japan, that high behavioral expectation?
I think it's because Japan's a society that's built on mutual collective, that expectation being expected of everybody.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
and if you ever go to the country, like you feel the sense of, wow, like everybody has signed on to the same code. And like, what is that code, right? Like if you're, it kind of takes a while to figure out, but then you realize like everybody is, agreeing to take their trash home. So that's why the streets are clean, right? There's almost no garbage cans. Or everybody's agreeing to like walk on the right side of the street so that you don't cause additional foot traffic. And there's, it's a very, like, Tokyo is a very dense city. So like the way that it works is everybody walks. And there's also like a pace. I feel like people walk at a specific pace. Like if you're walking too slow or you're walking too fast, you're not signing on to that code. Here in America, there's so many different, there are no like collective expectation. I mean, there's some, of course, like there's like laws and rules, but that's different. It's different than like a cultural standard. It's actually like what I love about being here is that there is no like there's no like one right way to do most things. And so we have to constantly be in conversation with each other here, right? And I think that's a really important part of being in the world. But for better or worse, in Japan, like there is and has always been like a right way to do things.
I'm curious to know about like leaning into that idea of independence. I think a lot of people are surprised by how independent young children are in Japan. And again, would you say that the parents are more likely to give that independence because of this community aspect? Is that why it's like because we know that we've raised these children to be a part of the community, we can trust them to be more independent at a younger age?
Yeah, part of it is that I think independence has a different meaning in the US and Japan. Here, it's about being able to do things completely on your own, the way you want to, more or less. In Japan, it's about knowing how to exist within the accepted framework of society. Like being independent in Japan means like you can, you know, if you're a kid, it's like I don't know if you've seen this show called Old Enough on Netflix, but it's like these little kids go shopping for their parents. And, it's really an interdependence more than an independence because they are able to like take a shopping list and put it in their head and go to the store and buy that thing in the store and come back. And the reason it works is because not just because the kids are more independent, but it's because, cars are driving more safely and the people around them are helping to support their journey. Like they go into the store, the storekeepers are like, oh, hello, like, what would you like? And they try to help them find the thing and pay for the thing. And so they're all like partaking in this, the raising and nurturing of this child. Yeah. So that I think that's the kind of independence that you see more in Japan.
Got
It
it.
wouldn't
Okay.
really work here though, right? I can't really send my kid to the store by herself here because it wouldn't,
Yeah.
wouldn't be safe. I don't know, like if she would get the right things.
Yeah, I think it definitely depends on your environment. Maybe if you're in a small town versus a big city or something more rural, like it
Mhm.
probably depends on some nuance there. But you also say
Sure.
that your daughter could be perceived as one of the best behaved kids in town, but in Japan, they're clearly the worst. So, again, do you think that, again, we're speaking to some nuance here, but do you think that, I guess, who do you think has it right? Again, there's that balance there, but do you think that Japan needs to maybe update what their perception is of children?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think there's no right answer. I think it's a little bit, yeah. So when my kids are here, they're generally perceived as being, fairly well behaved. Like we go to a doctor's appointment, they'll like sit in a chair and read a book together, and they're very polite to other people. Like they say hello, and they can order their own food. half the time. But in Japan, like they did get into not a lot of trouble, but like there were moments where I felt like, oh, they're not really behaving the way they should, right? They're putting their feet on the chairs. And, in Japan, there's like this very strong sense of do not put your outdoor shoes on indoor spaces. And like a seat would be considered an indoor space or not the same place where you put your shoes. And so they didn't really understand all those things. I think Japan is maybe too strict if I was to make a judgment about it. I think a little bit more relaxed stance on children couldn't hurt. They also have kids spaces. So if you go to a department store, they'll have like a family room and you can go in the family room and in there your kid can kind of run around and you can sit down and they have a nursing station. They even have
Oh,
these like
interesting.
really nice machines that will heat up your water bottle or like give you sterile warm
Oh,
water for your milk. But yeah, so there are these really lovely facilities that are just for kids and like so that's nice, but it also means that like if you're out in the non-family section, you're supposed to be a little bit more buttoned up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that American parents lean too much on verbal correction instead of, again, just kind of weaving this into how we raise our children just from a young age?
Yeah, we do. I do think that Japanese parents, and I don't actually count myself in one of them because I do use a lot of verbal correction. My kids go, they're living in America. They go to like American schools now, and they are like they want to know why they can't do things, and I have to explain everything. But I do think that Japanese kids they're not as requiring explanations about everything from their parents. They're like I think they're more inclined to be like, okay, my parents are here to like show me the ropes and how things are done. And because everybody is signing on to the same contract, there isn't like this sense of, why don't I get to do this thing? I mean, of course there is, right? But it's just a little less, it's a little more tempered, I think. Yeah. I don't know which is better or worse. I really like that my kids know how to, stand up for themselves, right? I think
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
important
Yeah.
too.
Like we said, it probably does all just come back down to balance. But I am curious to talk about
Mm-hmm.
exploiting cuteness. It's something I don't think we necessarily do here, though maybe picking up and maybe some Pinterest, like for women that want to do more Pinteresty parenting. But I'll let you share what you mean about a key trick in Japanese parenting about exploiting cuteness.
Yeah, we really cuteness has been scientifically proven to like work, right? It triggers something in people and it encourages them to do things like, when something is cute, it's less scary or like less boring. So the Japanese use like manga and animated characters to explain just about everything, like really boring things or rules like when you get even like if you walk around the city of Tokyo and you walk past a construction site, you'll see like a little manga character of a construction worker saying, I'm sorry for the mess. And like when my kids brush their teeth, they're really terrible at brushing their teeth. They'll try to finish in like 30 seconds. But I have this Pokemon app. And if you use Pokemon Smile, it's like this augmented reality app, and you put it in front of the kid that's brushing their teeth and it puts like Pokemon hat on their head and it's like tracking how well they're moving their hands. So it motivates them, right? Because it's cute. Yeah, and then like how we prepare our lunch boxes, like there's a lot of Instagram accounts about cute lunch boxes, but like that's a real thing. Like Japanese moms spend a lot of time making lunch boxes colorful and cute so that the kids would eat their
Yeah.
vegetables.
Okay, so I definitely need to be doing that because I feel like, yeah, my kids do not brush their the Pokemon app. I'm gonna have to download that because my kids are bad about that as well. And then, yes, the vegetable thing is not happening as much either. So maybe if I implore some more cuteness there, they'll be more willing. Just a couple more questions I have for you. One of the words that we didn't discuss that you write about in your book is omotenashi.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, so omotenashi is like the act of radically caring for people and things around
Okay.
you. Probably one of the most, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that blends into a lot of what we've been talking about. I guess as we kind of wrap
yeah,
up here, I am curious to what for someone that is listening today or that chooses to read your book, what is something that you'd want them to take away they can start to implement today from the Japanese way of parenting?
yeah. And, I think my biggest thing is that parenting is truly a choose your own adventure kind of thing, and there's no right way. But I think there are some things the Japanese parenting does that can be helpful. And then at the end of my book, there are these 30 tips, but like some of them are things like, instead of asking questions of your child, like maybe some things can just be really gentle prompts. So instead of being like, hey, what do you want to do today? It could be like, we are going to go to the museum and we're going to have a great time. So you're telling them what to do, but it doesn't really sound like it, right? Or, like taking off your shoes when you come into the house, or kind of building awareness around like, dirt from outside doesn't belong inside. Like if that feels aligned with your values, you can try that at home, or color coding your bookshelf, or, teaching kids to like kind of create an organized space. I think those are skills that translate well into adulthood as well, right? So if they know how to kind of keep things organized, that'll
Yeah.
stick with them forever.
Yeah. One thing I'm sorry I meant to ask you about. I'm curious to know how Japanese parents implement nature play, if it looks different there.
Yeah, Japan is very much like a nature connected place. Like we celebrate the seasons, and we have like our national holidays are named after the seasons. And kids, even if you live in a big city, you try to like get out and learn the names of little bugs and foliage. And everybody goes cherry blossom viewing during the spring and things like that. And a lot of the songs are about, like, the children's songs are about nature. Yeah, I'm sure there are lots of American children's songs that are also about nature, but we also have a lot of silly ones. So maybe just bring some of those in, the nature based ones. Yeah.
Awesome. And then I guess I can't have you leave without talking about minimalism and clutter. And in the Japanese culture, are parents more likely to want their children to take control of those kinds of things and live more minimally? What does it look like there?
Yeah, I think generally people live in smaller homes in Japan. Everything is smaller and more compact. And so, you don't have like a garage full of toys. So I don't know what every household does, but like for me, I try to rotate toys in and out of their room. And, if they're not being used for a while, I throw them out or I donate them. And yeah, I try to keep it so that they know that if they don't like clean up their toys at the end of the day, like they might just disappear. Like maybe that's, I don't know if that's Japanese or just me, but I definitely want them to understand how to take care of their things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Lisa, for listeners that want to dive deeper into your book and learn more, where can they connect with you and grab a copy of your book?
Yeah, so they can buy the book on and their favorite online bookseller, and maybe in a bookstore. It's called Japanese Way of Parenting. I'm on Instagram at Tokyo Mango, and then yeah, that's how you can find the book.
Perfect. Well, quickly as we wrap things up here, I'm going to ask you just final two rapid fire questions I ask every guest. And the first one is, what has been a beneficial resource in your life that you want to share with the listeners?
The other moms in my life, for sure. Yeah, talking to other moms. Yeah.
It's funny, someone just recently I had someone else share that answer. So I think that's where a lot of us get our not even just wisdom, but our
Mhm.
strength and support for sure. Last question is,
Yeah.
what is something you can't stop talking about?
Oh, so yeah, this is a little bit of a side note, but I have an 18-year-old dog, and I can't stop
Oh,
talking about him. He's like the number one support in my life, I think. Yeah, so, speaking of cuteness, little animals and support networks, wherever you get them, for me, it's my dog.
yeah. Wait, how you said 18. What kind of dog is it?
He's a miniature pinscher, and his name is Malcolm. And yeah, he's like the oldest
My
dog on the
husband.
block.
Yeah, no, that's pretty old for a dog. Our dog is 17. It's my husband's dog. He got him right before we started dating. And I just can't believe I'm like, sometimes you're just like, are you still alive when you come down for breakfast? And then I see him just sprinting outside and it's just, it's shocking. But yeah, I love that. Well, again, thank you so much for writing this book,
No,
sharing some of these insights from your own just childhood and your child rearing experience. I really appreciate it.
thank you so much for having me.